Carbon.
Yep, here we go. Let's, as long as we're going down.
Yes. We're recording this in Kalispell outside the teepee we'll be staying in tonight. But you'll hear more about that on the crazy episode, which is coming up next.
Yay! It feels good to be a little bit closer to
Nature.
No, like closer to where we've actually been, so we're not sort of remembering so far back.
Yes, that's true.
As we have kind of done on a few previous episodes, we have to kind of cast our minds back, a week or so, and now it's just... Although, that being said, it is really weird to think that we were in Carbon territory only a couple of days ago. Like, only a few days ago we were in
like
Denver.
much longer.
Oh my God. Like, just poles apart of time between our time in Denver and our, headed to Aspen, which marked a really big departure and change from, I think, the rest of the tour.
Yeah.
This is just very...
It's unlike what we've experienced so far and been so healing and helpful for both of us, I think.
Which is super important because I think, that sort of time between, Toronto and, that was really our Carbon time. Like we were, that was double diamond time. That was when it was all just getting really, really hard and really sticky and dangerous, and, our mental health was just kind of plummeting. But we had some really wonderful people keep their eye on us.
Yes.
And to get to this point now is really fulfilling.
Hi, I'm Michael Earp.
And I'm Bailey Turner,
Welcome to Michael's Walk.
the podcast.
Michael's Walk is a road trip, a search for something. Spoilers! It's myself, and it was inside all along.
If only it were that simple.
Driven by Tori Amos's album, Scarlett's Walk, I'm recreating the journey Scarlett took in its 20th anniversary year.
I'll also be there,
With the loving and patient
always patient.
support of Bailey and Teague Lee, 3 trans queers set out across America
That's 33 states in 55 days.
to connect with the songs, the land that inspired them, and the fans inspired by the songs. We'll talk music, travel, healing, and hope as we ask the questions: how do I heal from 15 years of coercive control and manipulation?
And what role does the music we listen to play in our own relationship narratives?
We've self-produced this podcast and trip.
You can support us via GoFundMe.
For the full story, head to michaelerb.net.
So on the Scarlet map, Carbon stretches from Aspen through to Madison, Wisconsin. But the way that we've had to do this journey, we just got the last little bit of that, or which is technically the first little bit, between Denver and Aspen.
And I think, we both acknowledged that when we got to Denver, we both realised we just needed to rest.
Yeah, there were so many things we could have done.
Loads.
And we really wanted to do them. But we had to just say to each other, actually, if I don't sleep now, how did I put it? I could feel the bolts coming off on the wheels, and I
Yeah.
had to stop to tighten them
Yeah, we...
just by sleeping.
That being said, we got to head to Drag Brunch at Hamburger Mary's and
Yeah.
got some groceries ticked off. Like we did, we got the laundry done.
We did laundry.
But I think that was the thing is, it wasn't the most sort of exciting city experience we've had, but it was everything that we needed, and Denver offered us the perfect kind of environment to just chill in the room.
We had a 2-hour nap when we got into the room.
Yeah, and I'm really ready for another one of those now, I gotta say.
Yeah. And then we had to sleep in,
We
where
did.
we allowed ourselves to not leave until 9 o'clock.
That's right. I mean, we did have late nights though.
That's true.
But no, Denver was a really great time.
Yeah, it turned out that X Bar, which is one of the popular gay bars in Denver, was like literally 2 minutes walk from where we were staying. So
Super handy.
I went out and explored that a little bit.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. But then the marked change was the second we left Denver, and we started at Clear Creek Canyon, which was Teague's suggestion. And it was just, here we are in the mountains.
Yeah. It's worth saying that getting to Denver was our last flight, so we were really relieved to get there, but we had like a fiasco with the car rental place. I lost the clip, the magnet clip that holds the phone up so you can do directions. So we had to run all these errands before we left Denver, and sort of getting into Denver and out of it was a real bastard. So by the time we got to Clear Creek, we were I think we were both a bit kind of crotchety and unsettled, and so we went down.
Walked along the creek.
It was beautiful, and it actually started to rain a little bit, which was super cleansing.
Yeah,
just lightly enough to kind of create a bit of a sheen on the skin. You know, it wasn't disturbing.
Had a Drew Barrymore moment.
We did. It was excellent. And then kind of headed up toward West Yellowstone.
You're jumping way ahead.
Am I? Oh
my
no,
goodness,
my brain.
fried. We were driving from there to Aspen, but
Right, yes.
we stopped at Twin Peaks Campground, and once again put our feet in a stream, and it was glorious.
Absolutely game-changing. I think we sat there for like 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something, just
Freezing our feet off in the steam.
they were very cold, but it was perfect. It just kind of helped to clarify our minds and get us back on track and readjust. We'd come from so many cities and seeing so many people and trying to get so much out of the cities, which cities are really hard actually, I think, to get under the skin of.
Yeah.
Like they're just so, whereas nature is just so open. Like it's right there in front of you. What you need to take from it is right there. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that I think sitting in that little creek and having ourselves a soak was just the perfect thing to be getting up to on our way to Aspen, which is super cute. I was kind of expecting it to be like a real like hoity-toity ski lodge place, but we had really lovely accommodation.
Well, I mean,
in the winter it probably, yeah.
But also it was our level of budget Aspen.
True.
So, like, it was nice. It was gorgeous. We were put in the penthouse suite, which we then had to haul our luggage up 4 flights of stairs to get to. But like,
Worth it. Totally worth it.
it was worth
A
it.
cheeky balcony and bathrobes. It was like the nicest accommodation we've been in weeks.
Yeah, it was so good.
Oh, heaven.
And so, like, even though it wasn't the, I don't know, filmic version of Aspen that I might have pictured, I think it was gorgeous and on our level. And my goodness, the girl checking us in had the most upbeat energy of anyone we've met
She was
so
the best.
far. She was just like, oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, awesome.
Have a great time. And, oh, do you need me to carry up your bags with you? Like, she was just the sweetest young thing. And and I'm just an absolute legend working the front desk.
Yeah. But then we head from there. We wanted to try and get sunset up at Maroon Lake, which again was Teague's suggestion. I love these suggestions Teague's sending us from
Well,
afar.
it is like he's still with us, you know.
Yeah. And I don't know whether I would have found it had he not sent it, and I'm so glad we went.
Absolutely. It was stunning.
We did not factor in to the sunset timing mountains because sunset happened, but like probably a good 45 minutes after it had gone
the sun
past
had
the
set
crest
past,
of the mountain,
which
was directly next to us. But
and then it began to thunderstorm.
Oh,
That was perfect.
gorgeous storm that like just kind of appeared out of nowhere, really.
It did, yeah. We could probably post photos about how when we got there it was just lovely and clear and bright, and then just next minute it's bolting down with rain and there's huge lightning strikes.
Yeah. And all of a sudden everyone is fleeing for their cars.
Pouring out of the forest, like, you know, kind of, except two guys who were
putting their raincoats on to go into the forest. And I'm like, it's what, 8 o'clock on a like rainy night. Where are you gonna
What's your plan?
set up your campsite if you haven't done so already?
Yeah, madness.
Each to their own.
But suffice to say, our time in sort of carbon territory was really special and really probably really saved us in a lot of ways.
Yeah, we very much were able to reconnect, and I think this is true of a few of these songs that go through the Rockies, where I was expecting to explore the energies within the songs, and I said that, I'll talk about it more on the crazy episode, but I said to Bailey, you know, I'm not feeling in a crazy headspace, but we were still having really deep conversations about what it is and like what it explores. And it turns out that I'm in a healing crazy headspace. And the same could be said for Carbon.
Absolutely.
I was in two minds. Like, I was all over the shop for most of this trip because I'm trying desperately to grab at every opportunity and experience everything. But then when we get to carbon, we're just faced with nature and ourselves, and that's what we came here for in the first place. So I really do feel like it centered me a lot and got me in a place where I could face what carbon is and how it's sort of unplayed in my life.
Beautiful segue into what does the song mean for you, and what is it about?
Well, from the Scarlet's stories, from Tori's angle, it's very much about someone who has this manic depressive sort of state of being and is quite a force in all things, including destruction, and how you desperately want to save them. Like, you can drive across the country in order to save them. And like, just that, keep your eyes on her. What lengths would you go to save someone from themselves? And so for me, it speaks loads about someone who had like terminally self-destructive alcoholism and trying to love them and see them through that for an extended period of time. And so, yeah, there's lots of that, just that desperation and not knowing what you're gonna come home to at the end of the day. I never knew whether I'd have a relatively sober partner who would be open to a conversation, or a drunk, depressed, volatile person ready to snap in anger at my slightest misdoing. And so that was something that I had to really juggle through a lot of my life.
Yeah, I mean, it's a similar interpretation for me. This song speaks to me about a very particular relationship I've been in. The person who's really struggling with mental health issues and was struggling with a lot of substance problems. You know, you feel like you have such a responsibility, but at the end of the day, only that person can save themselves. You can create every opportunity that you can, but it's a tricky thing, because any thought about helping someone who has, I mean, manic depression is now known these days as bipolar, or bipolar disorder, or borderline personality disorder, is how we understand that term now. We can't really understand that from the outside. And you've got someone who you can see that they're in pain. You can understand why they don't want to be in that pain anymore, but you can't use logic. They're in an illogical state of mind. The information you think they have access to, all the understandings that you assume they can use, just they don't have. You made a connection while we were driving as well about the hypervigilance that comes when you're in relationships like this, where you're always looking about 18 steps ahead, and you're constantly on alert for anything that could upset the person or trigger them, and therefore put you in danger, whether that's psychological or physical.
Yeah, that keep your eyes on her horizon. That's what it is. You're scanning the horizon constantly for potential upsets or threats, or, yeah, as you say, triggers, anything that could start an argument.
Yeah, which can have a real negative impact on your relationships, your other relationships and future ones, because you're often living in a worst case scenario. You're just always thinking about what could go wrong, and that makes you hesitant. It makes intimacies very difficult. It really can do.
It's more than just relationships wise too. Like, my therapist said to me that part of the reason I have certain responses to everyday situations is because I am so used, like, it is my default to be living on high alert. And so when I've been like that strained every single day for so long, it feels unnatural for there not to be some crisis.
For sure. And so you can kind of create one. You're kind of one, you can manifest one, and you can kind of, there's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that can happen, because if you can't see one, you start to check if there could be one, and so you start picking at things and sort of inquiring about stuff that really doesn't matter, and you're putting the people around you in a state of distress as to why you're so distressed, or it all kind of, it can be a really vicious cycle. Yeah, the song, I think the other thing the song is about for me, it kind of brings me back to sort of last October, toward the end of last October, when my relationship came apart and I found out from my doctors that I was having a hormone imbalance issue. And part of that was that one of my HRT medications was I was having the side effect of chemical depression, which is quite a surprising thing, but they said, oh, it's super common, but it is also very serious. Like, it will be creating a chemical synthesis of chronic depression, and we need to make sure that we're supporting you, because I was noticing really strange behaviors and difficulties in staying awake for long periods of time, complete moroseness at all times, suicidal ideation, self-harm ideation. It was all getting pretty bad and really scary.
It was hard watching it, not knowing what to do.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And that was the thing, that's when I I learned that from the inside, where it was like, well, your brain fucks up and doesn't tell you that there are people in your life, you sort of seek this information, you kind of have access to it, but you don't. It's really hard to explain, but in the moments you don't. You're so plagued by these ideas. Like, my thoughts were running on this hamster wheel loop that I could not keep up with, and I was becoming sick with nausea from overthought, and I couldn't wind my brain down. Medication wasn't helping, and it all just kind of got really out of control. And what it kind of meant for me in the end was that having eventually changed my medications and went on antidepressants and all that stuff has brought me to a better headspace now, where I feel a lot more in control. But it's an irrevocable change. I now have to stay on this course of antidepressants until I'm ready to come off, and we have to sort of check things like that, because they are very serious medications. It has meant that I just have a different understanding about what goes on inside that headspace. And luckily for me, when I was going through it, and the people around me who were seeing me struggle, I was able to say to them, don't worry, in another couple of months it'll be over. Because I know I know that this is chemical, this isn't chronic, this isn't based in it isn't a mental illness that I have, it's a chemical issue. And sure enough, it has been fixed, but there are people for whom it's not. And after hearing people say things like, oh, suicide is the coward's way out, and I know that it's a bit of a controversial point to make, but I sort of go, there's nothing cowardly about it. It's a hero's effort to get out of bed every day and deal with depression. And when you've got your brain kind of literally pushing you to a place of complete where you just cannot access the understanding of your life being valuable in any shape. And so for people who manage to get through that without hurting themselves, or without kind of deciding to it's a gargantuan effort, and I wish people understood that a bit more. Depression is the opposite of a weakness. It takes immeasurable strength to move through and to manage. So I think Carbon has such a great way of telling that truth. That oftentimes we're dealing with people who are black and blue.
Yeah.
And are on the hardest ski runs of the lot.
And it's hard not to draw parallels between downhill skiing and just the sense
plummeting
of Carbon, in that it is this full throttle song through thoughts and places and not knowing, and split-second decisions that could dramatically change the outcome.
Hugely. Well, I mean, even those names that Tori chooses of the sort of ski runs, like Bear Claw, very much a violence of the mind, is conjured up. Free Fall is that plummeting, and that.
And Gunner's View.
There it is right there.
Yeah.
When you look in a mirror, there's your Gunner's View. It's a very damn powerful song.
Yeah.
Whew. So on the other side of that, what Tori talks about is that there is incredible beauty that can be accessed when you don't have anything. Or at the sort of at rock bottom, there is a kind of freedom that can come there, and especially when you're a diamond person like Tori says Carbon is. You know, it's just someone who's been, I think she says, like, you know, chipped away at. And the relationship that I relate to this song is definitely that. You know, this is a beautiful human being who showed, you know, the world their optimism and their openness and their perspective on the world, and was just eaten alive by the people around them, and was misjudged and abused and put in awful situations, and, you know, continued to be addicted to drugs through that period, and it just destroyed them. But underneath the pain of that destruction, if you're fortunate enough, there is a whole world there. And for that reason, when we were talking about the project that I'm working on at the moment, so the poetry collection that I'm creating, what I want to do, the way that I want to structure it, oh, here's an exclusive. The way I'm planning to structure it is that there will be a piece of poetry correspondent to every song on Scarlet's Walk, including the hidden treasures. And as I've been going, I've been thinking about the themes and starting to put pieces together of like, well, what piece kind of goes with what song's energy and all that stuff. And I knew there was a time where I wanted to write about the trip obviously the trip's in the whole thing, but to talk about the sort of ethos of the trip, I've decided that will be the piece that's attached to Carbon. For that very reason, it's that idea that Tori says, at the base of pain, when you really go in and you unearth everything and you kind of face everything and you go to a place of supporting someone who is trying their best to heal, that's when the whole world opens and amazing things can really happen. And that's really what I feel this trip is signifying to me.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it's such a fucking powerful song. Yeah. When we were in Seattle, I got to have a fantastic conversation with Dan Videa about Carbon and how much it means to him. Have a listen to it. So we're in Seattle and I'm talking with Dan, who with his lovely husband Pat have put us up for 2 nights, and we're just so grateful.
We are just so happy you're here.
Well, it's just amazing company, incredible generosity, and we're just here for it on every level.
Yeah, I'm still kind of shocked that you're here. First hearing about this project and just being able to assist in any way that I can, I just needed to. It's anything to help document Tori Amos, her impact on us as fans, on us as people, as human beings, and then, going into just how powerful her work really, just how it resonates. It's beyond words sometimes.
Thank you.
And you're doing it.
Yeah, well,
this is intense.
Sometimes I feel like, what? It's just me doing it. Like, shouldn't someone else be doing this? I don't feel qualified.
Well, that's the thing, right? Well, that's the thing about trailblazers, right?
Ugh.
They're the first ones doing it.
Yeah.
So you just
I
gotta
will make the qualification.
Are you the Kate Bush of Tori Amos Road Journeys podcasts?
Yeah. Well, the other thing that Bailey challenged me to, because she's been giving me like writing challenges the last few days, and
kind of prompts kind of ideas.
Yeah, so like she set me was to basically write Scarlet stories, but from my perspective for my trip, as if Scarlet is coming back with us 20 years later.
Wow.
And so I have then written, you know how Tori does in the Scarlet stories, it's just like a paragraph where she sort of rambles about what Scarlet's getting up to and the themes of the song.
Right.
So I've done similar things, but from our trip now with a 20 years older Scarlet by our side. And then yesterday's writing challenge, which I'm like, okay, I'm not doing this until I need to procrastinate pretty hardcore in the future because this is too big.
What was the challenge?
The challenge was to plan out a road trip based on another one of Tori's albums.
That's a heavy. I mean, that's dense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, this one at least she gave you a map.
She gave us a map. Yeah.
I mean, I can't even fathom to think what another journey could be, unless you go overseas and do like Night of Hunters and like go to Ireland and like.
Yeah. Well, I thought like The Beekeeper is pretty obviously a UK album. Like you can easily track that around the UK to a degree.
As someone who's probably been there once,
Yeah.
I'm
I've
just
never
like,
been there.
okay, sure, why
Well, like
not?
there's Ireland, there's Jamaica in
Oh, that is true. Oh my gosh, imagine
the
you renting a Saab
yes. See?
and you just go along that coast,
yeah.
and then out of nowhere, something comes into the car at that moment, and you're activated, and you pull over to the side, and you go out the door and you go to the cliff, and the gales come in,
Yeah.
and the voices are just washing over you.
So you get it. You get it.
I get it now. It took me a second, but now I'm there. I'm fully
And
there.
so my challenge will be I want to do that for Choir Girl. I want to plan.
There's a map.
journey. Well, there is a map, but it is.
We could interpret it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, I was like, I could do it around Australia and like for hotel go to Cooper Pedy where I could actually go to a hotel beneath ground.
Oh my gosh.
Because they have underground hotels.
That would be pretty wild.
Where are you now?
Now I just have this image. I just have this image now of like, where is the hotel speakeasy?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be kind of fantastic? You
Yeah.
go underground and you open the door and there's just this beautiful people like slinking around along the walls and
See?
raspberry
There
swirl
you go. All
cocktails.
listeners, there's your writing challenge or, plotting challenge. Like, plot out a journey
It's
based
time to-
around
yeah.
one of Tori's albums that isn't Scarlet's Walk that comes with its own map.
Yeah. We're asking
I've
for a
done
little
that.
work here.
Yeah.
Okay, come on.
Been done.
Yeah.
Don't
yeah.
copy your classmates. But the reason we're talking for the Carbon episode is because anytime Carbon is mentioned in front of another Tory fan, I get this, that's Dan's song. As if like, don't you even dare talk about
Oh
it
my
without Dan
gosh.
being present.
That, first off, hearing that, hearing that does two things. It makes me feel really, really touched. Like that's really sweet. The fact that people have that association. It just that makes me feel really special. Secondly, it just makes me a little uncomfortable too,
Yeah,
because
I
it's
can
like,
see
oh,
that.
so they get it. They
Yeah.
get that there's a bit
Yeah.
of madness and chaos. And then at the end of the day, there's I don't know, I'm a Gemini, so there's the part of me that enjoys the attention, so I'm just going to take it where I can.
Take it. Lap it up.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, the one thing I love about Tory songs, and I guess like, two of my favorite songs are Carbon and Spring Haze. And the one thing and Beulah Land, let's say those three. Those are my top three. And with those songs, they are so important to me because they are the songs of hers that they're all internal. They're all cerebral. I think people could argue, well, we could argue with all the songs that, oh, they can mean this, and they're going to mean things for different people. And I think a lot of songs are like, oh, well, it's clearly about a breakup. It's clearly about this external event that happened. It's about something tangible that we can see and that we could, document and look at. Whereas, the three songs I mentioned, specifically Carbon, they're not, they all happen behind the eyes, at a dinner party, in a group, at a campsite, talking with people, and you're there talking with somebody, but behind the eyes, there's so much happening. And I feel like those are the songs that connect with me more because I find that, I'm always in my head, and that's where kind of I tend to live. For being the extrovert that I am, a lot of times I'm very much in my own head. And the chaos of Carbon, it's terrifying at times. I find the song wildly terrifying, but it calms me in the same sense.
Yeah.
I don't know where that kind of dichotomy comes from, but it just...
I mean, for me, like part of that, things that terrify you but also calm you, it's like knowing where it's standing. Like if you know where the thing that scares you is in the room, then you can be a bit more in control of the situation, perhaps.
Yeah. And well, I mean,
keep your eyes on her horizon.
And that's all you have.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all you have. And I think that's the terrifying thing, because you only have the horizon. So sometimes when you're trying, that's your that's the stake you can claim. But
It's still
if you don't have that, the horizon's far away. It's in the distance. And that doesn't help the now. That doesn't help the upside down, swirling, frenzied blurriness that could just be waking up and getting on the bus to go to work.
Yeah.
And it's wild that trauma has many, many faces.
Yeah.
What I love about the Carbon story is that, the narrative, I believe, in Scarlet's Walk is Carbon is a manic depressive character that Scarlet, I don't know if Scarlet knows her or they just meet, but there's a connection.
Yeah, I think she's an old friend, and she hears she's in trouble, and so she rushes across the country to try and save her.
And they go to these ski lodges or whatever. They're going to these resorts where she's following Carbon. And Carbon's just like, the girl's messy. The girl is messy. The girl is I don't know, 4 martinis in by the fire lodge, throwing her glass in the fire, jumping off of the ski lift ride things, she's chaos.
Yeah.
And those people. Have you ever partied with those people? You're at a party and there's that one friend, I don't know, Lisa or Freddie, I don't know. But they're like, oh my gosh, they're on their 3rd drink. Okay, I have to start, now I have to, my spine is straightened and now I can no longer enjoy myself because now I have to make sure I know where they're at all times.
You become the mitigation.
You become Scarlet in that moment.
Yeah.
And you do it because you care. You do it because you care about them, even though this energy that they're taking from you at this moment, unwillingly, they don't
realize.
They don't know that
They think it's all a party.
And that's fine. I mean, well, for them it's all fine. But and we can choose if we want to hold that space for them. But whatever. So there's that part of it, right? The keeping the eyes on them. That's one way you can look at this. Here's a superficial way we can look at Carbon, right?
Oh yeah.
Here's a superficial, your crazy friend who just goes out of control and you're always there to save them. I have a very, very well, I was gonna say I have a long history with my mother. It's 37 years running, but we've been through ups and downs.
Yeah. And
for a long time, I did not like her or care for her very much because of the decisions she made. And one day I was listening to Carbon, and I was in a space where I just gosh, I just wish she was not my mother. I just wish something would happen where I didn't have to worry about her anymore because I'm exhausted. I'm a child. I shouldn't have to worry about this woman and the chaos that she brings into my life. And I was listening to Carbon, and then the key word happened, the key moment, and it was, Carbon for me is a lot about compassion. Yeah. For me, that's the crux of the song. And it made me realize that, just as Carbon or Lisa or Freddie, who are unintentionally pulling my attention, my mother was just a product of her own trauma and her own life. And she's just doing what she does. And I have to recognize that she is her own person.
Yeah.
She is her own person dealing with whatever it is she's dealing with. And I need to hold a moment of compassion for that. And sometimes the only thing I can do is keep my eyes on her.
Yeah.
And that's when it clicked for me.
Yeah.
And then from then it just kind of spun out when it was there was days where I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to leave the house. I would call off work. I was broke, couldn't eat, but then why are you calling off work? I don't know, because I can't. And I realized I have to have compassion for myself too. So Carbon does this wonderful thing, and maybe it's the mental illness that she talks about with Carbon. There's this element of interchangeability with it, where it's always changing. That it could always mean something else. Carbon always means something, and it could be something different every time.
Well, there were so many times when for me it was all about my ex, but then more often than not, I
see myself in it, in that the mayhem and just that fierce downhill skiing.
Yeah. And it's like, you can't even see your own horizon anymore.
Yeah.
You got to find it. Because, yeah, it's, because at the end of the day, blow by blow, your mind is unraveling. Oh my God, can we talk about that fucking second verse?
You can talk about anything.
That second verse? That second verse. And like, even the way it's written on that, on the page, like it's just like blow by blow, her mind cut in sheets, layers deep, now unraveling. I don't know why that makes the song better, even though it's something you have to read. It's like you can't really hear it, but just the thought that she put into that. And it just highlights just the chaotic nature of it. I don't know.
And the speed with which things unfold, like
it's
incredible how quick things can turn and how fast things can unravel.
Represented in the key changes of that song.
Yeah.
Constantly, like, I think it's like a 6/8 into well, I have it on my arm right here, but like, like 6/8 and then 7/8 and then back to 6/8. And it's just like constantly, like, you never know where it's going to go.
So I once had a friend who was a very big Tory fan, and her husband was, a cursory Tory fan, but he was a drummer. And a little while after Scarlet's Walk came out, I was at their place having dinner, and we were talking about it, and I was just rabbiting on in the way that I do.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, how about you? Like, what's your favorite track? And he's like, the one with the drums. And I was just like, right. And then after, he's like, it's just got a brilliant time signature. The drums are really interesting. I just, like, that was his connection to it as a drummer.
Yeah, yeah.
And then after a bit of deciphering, we realized it was Carbon.
See? That's the beauty of it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's really amazing to hear, right? Because, I feel like I'm not the most technical musician, but I'd imagine as a drummer, Maddie it probably took him a while to navigate that song, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't play it together live till 2009?
Right, yeah. That's a
Like,
while.
since the album recording?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I wonder if it was like, oh, how do we work this up?
Yeah.
It's an intense song, and to be on pace, to have that frenzied, just constant. How long can you do that? Just, it never stops. I don't know. It's just, you don't have a chance to breathe.
No. But that's the whole point of the song.
I know.
And I love that Tori's so able to mix the themes that she's pulling out lyrically, musically as well. Like, everything fits together whenever she just writes any song at all.
I mean, I will say, I think she said in an interview once how, like, sometimes she's like, my lyrics I know don't make sense to people. Sometimes for me, it's just a thing of like the words and how they sound.
Yeah.
And you read them on paper and it's like, what the hell is this? But then when you sing them in the melody or whatever, you find the accents like, oh my gosh, here's where it is. Carbon's one of those songs. I feel like Carbon is definitely like one of the top 5. Just, again, the second verse, like I said earlier, like blow by blow, her mind cut in sheets. It's a double diamond time. Just the way that, like...
Well, to be honest, it wasn't until I started, like, doing a bit more research and putting my thoughts together for this project that I even knew that all of those things were ski runs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I just thought they were random words she was pulling out of nowhere. But
Bear Claw.
Bear Claw,
Free Fall, and Gunner's View.
And then Double Diamond Time, like...
Black and Blue. Oh, I mean... We should do that song, the Tori Amos thing, right? We're just like, so each line, here's what this means. No. Yeah, it's just, and that's the thing, right? And that's what makes Tori so wonderful, right? It's like, you can enjoy the song. Musically, it's great. Vocally, it's great. Listen to this great piano work. Oh, you hear that time signature? Look at these drums. But there's research. Like, right, there's, I mean, you know, you got to crack open a book sometimes. Open up a Google tab and,
Oh, yeah.
what the hell is she talking about? Oh my gosh, and then the world opens up even more.
Yeah.
Layers.
But also, like, put it on over dinner and your guests are none the wiser. They just think it's awesome dinner music. And then you're like, yeah, dinner music that'll punch you in the gut.
Oh gosh. I remember once when the album came out, I was, what is this, 2002? So I was
17.
15. Oh, I was born in 85. Yeah.
17.
17, thank you.
Because I was 18.
That's right. Oh, so my birthday's in June. So in the school year, I was always a year younger.
Right, okay.
So 16, 17, that's not the point. I'm younger, I guess that is the point. Whatever. Anyway.
But it came out in October of 2002, so you would have been 17.
There you go. And I remember one of these adults that I worked with, or that I went to an all-boys school, and I lived there for a long time. And one of the administrators, who was kind of like a mentor to me, was like, so I know you love Tori Amos. You talk about her all the time, and I'm not familiar with her work. You should I would like to know some of the songs. Like, and I remember I burned her like a little CD, like just 10 songs. I did something short and simple.
And I put Blood Roses on it.
She was an old. Now I'm being ageist. Anyway, no, she was. I felt like I had to be very particular with the songs.
No, I was being.
Yeah, yeah. So I put Professional Widow on there. No, but one of the songs I did put on there was Carbon, because I just it's a beautiful fucking song. I remember like giving her the CD. She's like, oh, I can't wait to listen to it. Week goes by. I come by and I like pretend that like, oh, I forgot I gave her the CD. Really, I'm like drilling over her like, oh my God, what does she think? Oh my God, what do you want to... And I'm talking to her. She's like, oh, so I listened to the CD. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot it was a Tori. Yeah. So like, what did you think? And she's like, oh, like, you know, the Sounds All These Years song, I thought that was really pretty. And that Pretty Good Year was like really like, what a wonderful voice. Her piano playing's great. I was like, yeah. She's going through. I was like, what about this song? You know, track 5. I remember I put it in the middle of the mix. Oh yeah, yeah. No, that was kind of boring. I didn't like it very much. I thought it was just kind of a boring song. It just like didn't do anything. And
Didn't do.
Fucking.
It does.
Wow.
Everything.
Like, you clearly hate yourself, and you clearly don't want any kind of positive life-changing moments to happen in your life anymore.
She can't see the horizon because she's in a well. She is like Samara from The Ring.
From The Ring, yeah, exactly. I mean, Samara had better hair, let's be real. No, I mean, I remember that moment, and I remember like being devastated because I was just in my young little teenage head. I was just like, "You're an adult. Like, you should be able to get these things.
Get this. If I get it, why can't you?
Like, why can't you get it?" It was so funny, and in a weird way, I think it like turned me off of the song for a little bit because she was wise. She was kind of like a mentor, and she kind of like was helping me a lot in my queerness at that time. And I remember just being like so confused. I'm like, "Is this a basic song? Like, am I missing something?" But then it wasn't until a few years later, and it was like I had a moment with my mother and just like listening to Scarlet's Walk, and it just, oh no, Barbara doesn't know what she's talking about. Yeah. That's what it is. Like I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
Even if I'm unraveling blow by blow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Compassion. Carbon equals compassion.
That's wonderful.
It's because people are going to make horrible decisions, and people are going to put themselves in situations where they're never going to prosper.
Yeah. And
they're never going to want better for themselves. And it's tragic when you love somebody who's in that position, whether it's a product of mental illness, whether it's a product of, you know, horrible trauma or some form of social societal conditioning. It's hard to see people in that point. And we have the choice then, right? We have a choice whether to keep our eyes on them and always be there, regardless of the damage they do to themselves. Or we don't have to. And I just find that very powerful. Yeah. And I feel like for me, it's become like almost like the crux of all my relationships in my life now, where I really kind of just think to myself, like, do I want to keep my eyes on this person's horizon, or do I not want to? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm saying now.
No, I hear what you're saying exactly.
You know, at the end of the day, we have to. I feel like the thing that Tori preaches most is not being a victim to the things that happen to you, surviving them, overcoming them, and then, you know, pushing forward, or passing on that love and compassion and care and that wisdom. I think Carbon is totally underrated because I don't hear about it enough. I feel like within the community sometimes. I know a lot of people like it, but I just feel like it's her one song that just really captures it. It just gets it right.
Yeah.
Get with it, people. Like, get with it.
That's how I feel about Scarlet's Walk across the board. Like,
I mean,
I know it sort of. I feel like in the last year or two, people are sort of speaking of it more highly than previously.
yeah.
And I've heard some wonderful things. Like, I think people are recognizing that as they themselves age, they're recognizing the value in it, and perhaps they were just not in the place to see what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, like, for me, it came out when I was 18, and it's been my number one album since. So it clicked so hard for me so quickly.
I mean, it must be so amazing for you too to like have this connection with this album immediately. It has this impact, and now you're like almost. I mean, you're shifting your perspective with it and having a totally different experience with it now. You know, let's say in regards to Carbon, how has that been for you? Like, first listening to it, the relationship that you had with it, what it meant to you. Has that changed? Has that evolved? Are you in a different place? About the same place?
Like I said just a bit earlier, like now I can recognize myself in it more and wanting to keep an eye on myself a bit more.
Right.
I was always in a place where I was too willing to sacrifice myself for other people, and particularly for the relationship that I was in. And when you said before that, you know, you've got to keep your eye on their horizon no matter how much damage they do to themselves, like my mind just naturally went to, but what about how much damage they're doing to you? Because that's where I got stuck. I was ignoring all of the damage that I was taking in order to preference looking after them and keeping my eye on their horizon.
Yeah.
And that was to my detriment because I lost myself. Life got too hard. I gave up everything. And then I got to a point where I had nothing left to give. And so I had to take my eyes off their horizon in search of my own.
That's such a hard balance.
Yeah.
It's such a hard balance. I believe we talked about this earlier. There's that gray area, right, where maybe as queer folk, we have to navigate how to love in a way that works for us. But it's hard when the idea of how to love somebody or how to be in a functioning relationship is so skewed.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we're told that, well, if we want to have it, we have to have it this way. Oh, you're not going to do it that way because you're queer? Well, who knows how you're going to get it now? And sometimes we get so hungry for it, the value that we have for ourselves shifts. And then we lose sight of that.
So
it's not an easy thing to find.
When I came out, someone important to me said, gay people don't live beyond 40 and gay relationships don't last more than 5 years. And then 5 years in, my partner goes to prison, and I'm like, well, I can't prove that, right? So
Right.
I got to double down. And like,
I'm sorry that you had to hear. Like, I'm sorry you had to
and that's
hear
not
that.
the only thing, obviously, that factored my decision making, but it certainly played on my mind a lot throughout the rest of my relationship.
Yeah.
I'm going to prove this statistic wrong.
I can make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm strong enough, then nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Doesn't even matter if my partner is mistreating me and lying to me and everything else that was wrong with that relationship, because I'm strong enough to bear it all in order to prove that gay relationships have value.
The misdirection of strength, right? It's like, oh no, I can do this. I have the strength. And it's just like, oh honey, that strength is wearing a mask. That's not what that is. You're being, you know, it's...
Strength is walking away from
Oh
this.
my gosh, yeah.
I love that person so much. We actually had a Zoom back during the pandemic where we agreed that we would trade. Dan was going to teach me about what carbon was, and I was going to teach Dan what chocolate song is. And we had this great chat, and both of us really, you know, so carbon is also, in addition to all the things I've just kind of spoken about, is very much attached to, you know, what Dan said. And I think there's a section I forgot about when we were planning, but that sort of verse, "Get me Neil on the line, no I can't hold,"
Oh my goodness.
is so powerful. But it is that moment where you do make the call,
Yeah.
to someone who you need help from, and how powerful that call is. But what I wanted to pick up on is the fact that if someone you know and who you love is going through something that is serious and dangerous,
And you feel out of your depth.
yeah, you need to make sure you're getting help as well. Like, it's not just that person who needs help.
Yeah.
You need to consider how you're getting that help too, so that you're not bearing too much of the burden in your support for them. You know, it has to kind of be a bit of it needs to be a chain.
Yeah,
it needs
like
to be a chain of
Large
support.
buildings don't have single buttresses.
That's right. Found her at the end of a chain.
The other thing that I thought would be worth talking about is from that same stanza, like, I've always felt that powerful desperation in that line. Get me Neil on the line, no I can't hold. But then as we were driving, the next line where she sings, have him read Snow Glass Apples, I realized that I don't know what Snow Glass Apples was, and so I asked Bailey to Google it while I was driving.
Yeah.
And she read me the synopsis of Neil Gaiman's short story written in '94, I think,
Yeah.
called Snow Glass Apples, which is a take on the Snow White fairy tale, but from the
Wicked,
supposed
yeah.
evil stepmother's perspective, where it's actually Snow White who is a vampire feeding on the energies of those around her, an undead monster, and how nothing is what it seems.
Yeah.
And that really struck home for me, and I desperately need to read this short story now, because it spoke volumes over my relationship, where I thought I understood, you know, what was going on and who were the good guys and what we were fighting for. But it turns out that all of that was just the version of events that I was being presented.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, you know, getting that support when you need it is so important.
Absolutely. It's that question as well of, you know, who's the villain here?
Yeah.
Because these kinds of things can always become a bit of a who did what to whom, and we can get really caught up in that, well, who's to blame and who's the bad guy, knowing full that everyone's involved.
Yeah.
You know, it's not to say that people deserve, you know, no one deserves to be abused by any margin. It's just to say that when abuse happens, it's very rarely a clear-cut kind of moment, because if it were clear-cut, it would be so much easier for people to leave. You know, so many times where people don't leave abusive relationships because they feel responsible in some way, or because the abuser had painted them as having done something that the abuser responded to. And, you know, we also shouldn't ever expect that someone who faces abuse in a relationship doesn't fight back. Or, you know, we've got to be really open about there are multiple ways for this whole thing to work, and what leads to people getting to that point where they're considering, you know.
So how about some advice from Virginia, from the frenetic energy of Carbon?
I think, you know, the key thing coming out of Carbon is, my advice to Virginia is always to understand your limits, and to have have access to resources of support, and know where to find that stuff, so that you're not finding it when it's too late.
Yeah.
And have it at the ready. There are so many more resources now than there used to be around how to help people who express that they are going through a hard time, or who to call if you're having a hard time yourself. Remembering that while friends and family are sometimes the first people we speak to, or the people we want to speak to, because they're often critical to the issue,
Yeah.
there are people out there who are paid and trained to help with things like this. And that, I think I've said that on an episode previously. Those are the people who we need to be aware of our access to. It's kind of that thing of, when you're on the plane, we're going to identify the exits. Please make sure you know where they are. Please familiarise yourself with their location, how many seats there are away, and remember they could be behind you. Like, it's doing that.
Yeah.
And having that kind of information. I actually have a mental health first aid card in my purse, so that if I find myself in a meltdown or a breakdown, then I can provide that to someone who comes to help me.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I like it. I wanted to do one for a while around. I haven't had any serious issues in a while, but like when I was going through all that chemical depression stuff, I was like, what am I going to do here? Because I have no idea what's going to happen if something were to go wrong while I was out and about, or I lived alone. Like, how would people get the information they need? Who had keys to my place? Like, all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Because I've been in that situation before. I wasn't necessarily going to bring this up, but I'll sort of generalize it. A really, really dear friend of mine a while ago called me and said, can you hang out with me tonight? And I had plans, and they were like, look, if I don't hang out with someone, this is it. And I went, okay. And I took them seriously, because I had known this person for a while, and I cancelled my plans, and I went and spent like a bunch of time with them, and we had a really open talk about why they were really on the brink. And it was one of those things where I was like, look, what do you need to do? Because whatever you need to do, I'll do it. And if you need me to sit and, be there, like, I'll be wherever you need me to be, because I can't imagine what you're going through, and whatever you think will be helpful is what I'll do, kind of thing. And I'm so glad they called. I know this person is still, alive today and has a great relationship, and still struggles with depression, but very differently than they used to. But it was so key that I came into that moment as openly as I could. But I wish, even now that I'd had more of an understanding. So I suppose that's my advice to Virginia, is have that understanding, so that if ever anyone for any reason makes the call, and you answer, you're gonna have an idea about what to do and what to ask and how to support that person.
Well, my advice sort of is the other side of that. It's basically just remember that you don't actually know what anyone is going through. And, I don't say that lightly. The amount of times that people have said that to me since I've started publicly talking about what I have been through. Like, I was very much a smiley face going about business, public figure in my own small little world. But I absolutely hid what was going on in my life, and so did my partner. And so even our closest friends that we would hang out on the regular have said to me since, like, I had no idea that all of this was going on. I can't believe that it was, so intense. Like, we never saw a crack. And so I like when people are gracious to their own lack of knowledge, I guess, is one way of putting it, where you can not jump to conclusions about someone else's life just because something they have done has mildly inconvenienced you, or something like that, or they've responded in a strange way to what you thought was a completely innocent remark. Like, you honestly don't know what they've been through, and so just having that little bit of grace with everyone can go a long, long way.
Absolutely. Well, let's do the song swap.
Yeah.
This one was an interesting one for us to figure out as well.
The first thing that came into my mind was a song called Human by a singer who performs under the name O Land, like O-H Land. They're Swedish, I think, or Norwegian maybe, somewhere from Scandinavia. I listen to a lot of Scandinavian music. Their song Human, the chorus is, I don't like you're human, it reminds me of all the things I hate in me. And I guess that plays into it, where like I've found myself recoiling from other people's messier qualities because I know that like I have my own mess going on. And then the next thing that I thought of was That I Would Be Good by Alanis Morissette. I think this kind of speaks for itself. It's just so, that sort of base of hope that someone will still love you even when you fall apart. And then there's another song that I listen to a lot, particularly in the last couple of years of the relationship, and then cried to it a lot after the breakup, called The Pure and the Damned. It's by, I can't pronounce this one. Oniotrix or something, Point Never. And the vocalist in it is a very old sounding Iggy Pop. But the quality of his voice is so beautiful for this song. And it's all about wishing you could have done things differently and how you may or may not have failed other people. And then there's this line where he's like, maybe one day we'll go and pat the crocodiles. And I'm just like, anyway, it kills me every time. How about you?
The first one that jumped to my mind is a song called The Next Right Thing, and it's on the Frozen 2 soundtrack.
Didn't see that one coming, did you?
Did ya? Yeah. I remember seeing...
Because we're on ski slopes.
No. Nothing to do with ice. I saw Frozen 2 in the cinema in London it was one of the last movies I saw at the cinema for a long time. And I was going through a lot. At the time, my life was kind of really crumbling around me at that point. And this song kind of played at a moment, Kristen Bell sings it. And I remember watching this scene going, this song is gonna save lives. This movie is gonna change people's lives, because the song is about, her reaching kind of rock bottom and complete and total isolation and devastation, and trying to figure out how to get through it. And the whole kind of premise of the song is, well, I'll just do the next right thing. And it is that kind of, we'll do this and we'll see if that works, and we'll just just take it down. And I remember that being something that someone taught me when I was going through all the really hard, the time I was going through. Actually, it was Yvette, now that I think about it. Yvette was like, you don't have the ability to plan for 3 months ahead at the moment, by the sounds of things. Like, let's just go, let's see if you can do a week. If you can't do a week, see if you can do a day. Like, just see if you can, if you can only project what you could do for the next hour, just do that.
Yeah.
Just go, okay, for the next hour, I'll watch Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
And that's all I need to do. And then the hour after that, I'll put some pasta on, or I'll make dinner. It was like, and that really saved me, because it meant that I didn't feel overwhelmed by how devastated and hopeless I felt. I was able to kind of go, well, I'll just do this bit. And so that song was a big one.
That also ties it. We've been listening to a lot of Alanis on this drive. I mean, we didn't inflict it on Teague, but since Teague left us, we've had entire days of nothing but Alanis. There's in Thank You where she says, how about grieving it all one at a time?
Yeah.
And I just think
that was a horse, by the way, just in case you got any ideas.
Yes. Horse rabbit.
Yeah, we can chuck Thank You in there, I think. The other song that I wanted to put in is a song called Dope by Lady Gaga. This song is very particular to my experience and the relationships I've had that have been affected by drugs. And what I love about it is it's Lady Gaga singing about her own battles with substance abuse and addiction. So there's kind of the song that she's singing is about, she needs her art and her creativity and that kind of side of her mind more than she needs to get stoned. But I kind of listen to it and I sing, kind of sing that part to myself as in kind of two other ways, which is like I need that person in my life more than dope needs them. Like I need them more than dope in my life, and at the same time, like I need them more than marijuana needs them. Like more than they need marijuana, or more than marijuana needs them.
To want you more.
Exactly. You know, you definitely want to be, and that's such a hard thing because alcoholism and narcotic addiction, they don't work to that logic. The reasoning doesn't change the consequences. And the last one I wanted to share was very personal as well, based on the experience I was talking about going through chemical depression for that period. I would say that the first night that I realized that something was really, really wrong, I listened to this song. It just kind of happened to come on. I don't really know why, because I'd never really listened to it before properly, but it was on a playlist and it just kind of turned up. It's a song called It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. I believe it's a Bob Dylan song, but this cover is by Anoni. And it's incredible. And so I kind of listened to this song and I was like, no, something's not right. Something really bad is going on. I don't know what it is. And then the next day was when my relationship broke down. And that evening, Michael came around to hold me because I was falling apart, and it came on then too. And I remember feeling, I was like crying in my best mate's arms, and it came on and I felt relief listening to it. And I remember you were like, oh God, we can turn this off. And I was like, no, I need it. This is helping me, because it was taking me to that place that I needed to be. So I didn't feel kind of that really painful push-pull. I just felt the liberation of just feeling my feelings. And it's also significant because through the worst and darkest period of that whole time, my deal with myself was that I wouldn't do anything to my body. I wouldn't hurt myself in any way. And if I could get through it without doing that, then I was allowed to get myself a tattoo. And so I have a match tattoo on my right wrist, and it's in reference to the last line of the song, which is, strike a match, go start anew, it's all over now, baby blue. So those are the three that I offer.
Yeah, that was a tough time. And then I came over again like a week or two later, and you were firmly in your Adele phase.
Oh yeah, she released 30 shortly after that, and I listened to that album. And Ocean to Ocean came out the day after that. The day after the split.
Oh, the split.
Yeah, so I had the split, and then I had, it was
Birthday Baby kicking you in the crotch.
Oh. And How Glass Is Made, fuck.
Oh.
God. Yeah,
Thanks, universe.
Yeah, no, actually, I would say that the Adele album was a real lifesaver, because there are so many songs that people told me to listen to, in the music as healing thing. People are like, oh, listen to this song. And so many breakup songs are about fault and blame and pain and accusation. And 30 was a breakup album, but it was so much about still caring very much for the person, but having to acknowledge that it just wasn't workable, and there were powers beyond the love that made the impact on the relationship.
So go listen to some music and heal, shall you?
Yeah, go for it. Just rub some dirt on it. That'll fix it. She'll be right, mate.
We'll see you in Crazy E-Town.
We will.
The Michael's Walk podcast acknowledges that the journey they are undertaking takes place on the sacred and unceded nations of many proud Indigenous peoples. From the lands of the Wurundjeri and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, we are fortunate to call home, to each and every Native American tribe's land we'll set foot on as we travel. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and humbly acknowledge their sovereignty.